Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, now part of the Bleav Network. And joining me is my co-host, Stephen Kerr, 65 plus years in sports journalism between the two of us. Later in the show, is Reed Sheppard even better than the hype? 3 big Astros All-Star break questions and remembering a beloved former Texan. But Stephen, our fans might be wondering, hey, where have those guys been the last 2 weeks? And I heard you were actually using this time and your clandestine engineering skills to build Kyle Tucker a new shin, because apparently after getting a dreaded Astros second opinion, his shin just shattered into a million pieces.
Man, yeah, he sure did, Robert. Yeah, I wish that's what I was doing. I mean, I know you've been dealing with Hurricane Burl, and I've been on the shelf, and my wife has been on the shelf. So I would say that we've had our own, kind of all-star break. But trust me, buddy, there's been no all-star game for me because I've had the summer cold that I guess decided to hit. And my wife broke her elbow. So I jokingly told her that her days as a Houston Astros pitcher are over. No more. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks, Robert. But you've had some pretty serious stuff of your own going on. I live in Austin, but you, of course, live in Houston, right in the heart of where the storm hit. And I'm certainly glad that you and a lot of my Houston area friends are okay, albeit, without power or internet, or in some cases, both.
Did Katie shatter her own elbow in honor of Lance McCullers? Was that part of the, her sympathy for him or something like that?
You know what? If that's the case, I'd rather she go about it another way, because let me tell you, I don't ever want to watch someone get a bone set ever again in my entire life. Just tell you that.
Yeah, one thing that I will say about this whole Astros mess is, if the Astros say you're going to be back in a few days, go ahead and get your will ready, because it's over with, guys. It's just, you're done.
But at least where Lance McCullers is concerned, I mean, we still have some hope for Luis Garcia, and, Justin Verlander's kind of up in the air. But every day is different, especially when you throw, because the next day they could shut you down again.
If the Astros say you're going to on the shelf for like a week, it's like, Stephen, do you just kind of shut it out at this point? You just go, oh my God, what happened to this guy?
Well, I mean, yeah, Robert, and I know the Astros can be kind of hush-hush about their injuries, but let's be honest. The arm, especially when you use it the way pitchers do, it is so unpredictable. It's nearly impossible to really predict when a guy's going to come back.
Yeah, and more on the Astros in a little bit later in the show. But if you're wondering, the hurricane knocked me off my internet for a week. In fact, the cell towers were so screwed up in my complex, I had no internet of any kind. I was just sitting in my car a couple of blocks away, Stephen. I mean, how did we live before all this? I don't even know.
Well, and, Robert, like you, I work from home, and I would just be livid beyond description if I went over a week, because you went over a week, I think, without internet. If you go over a week, without being able to do your livelihood because of the internet, the funny thing is, you didn't lose power, did you, at all?
It was a miracle. I didn't lose power.
Wow.
I don't know.
But the internet was gone for a week. Go figure.
Yeah, I don't know what I did to deserve that, but thankfully that was a good thing. So I'm not whining. I was just it was frustrating though to not talk to you, not talk to our beloved fans. And, I had to go to the Summer League watch party for the Rockets on Friday and a random sports bar on Sunday to watch Reed Sheppard. And first of all, Stephen, I met some fans of our show, and that was really cool. I know it's hard to believe, but I was being introduced as sort of a minor celebrity, I guess.
Man, that's one of the things I do miss about living in Houston, Robert, where you are and us doing the show together, is I don't get to go to those kind of appearances with you and get to meet the fans who listen to our show. And, we obviously get the correspondence, on YouTube and X and different social media. But yeah, from all my days in radio, that's one of the things I always look forward to, is to just meet the people who listen to you, because you can put a name to a face to a name, that sort of thing, and just meet them up close. So that's great that you got to do that.
Absolutely love the Rockets community. Great to attach some social media folks with their real life flesh and blood personalities.
Especially with some of the names that they come up with.
Yeah, that was cool. And we'll do a deeper dive into Reed Sheppard with a special guest in a couple of days. But I thought Sheppard was even better than the hype. Like I was saying earlier, he fizzled out with that third Summer League game in 4 days. That's a lot to ask for those guys, but he showed us the whole package: the shooting, passing, IQ, the point guard potential, the mid-range, the quick hands and anticipation on defense, the quick, accurate outlets. And at the very least, Stephen, he's ready to spell Fred VanVleet at the backup point guard this season.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I know that, we always have to be cautious. Well, it's summer league and this and that. But remember what Cam Whitmore did last year. He ended up being the MVP of the summer league. And yeah, it took him a while to kind of get his engine started. But man, as time went along, he was great. He finished the season on a great note. So you can hope that Reed Sheppard can kind of do the same thing. And, there may be some people ready to pencil him in, just put him over Fred VanVleet right now. Well, no, that's not going to happen. You and I both know Ime Udoka doesn't work that way. And Reed's not ready for that. We do have to kind of temper it a bit. But listen, the guy brought everything. I mean, the shorter answer is, what did this guy not do? Because he brought everything, as you said, Robert. He rebounded. He had steals. His shooting, I know that the numbers were prolific in college, and it's easy to kind of blow it off as, well, it's college. But his shot, Robert, is pure. It's real. And I think it is NBA genuine, given some time for him to really adjust, to play against the greatest guys in the NBA and not just summer league competition. But you got to love what you saw, at least through the first couple games. And yeah, you have to be cautious because he is still in a learning phase.
In those first two games, he had 45 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds, 6 steals, 4 blocks, shot 56% from the field, 45% from three. I mean, even after I think the third game, I think he was still 49% from the field because those first two games were so great. And Steve, we always have to preface this, like you said, by saying, oh, it's only summer league. He's doing it against future G leaguers, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not sure any other rookie has looked this good in summer league.
Well, I'm going back, a few years, Robert, and I can't think of one other than, as I said, Cam Whitmore. He looked really good last year too.
I'm talking about in the entire 2024 draft class.
Draft class. Well, no, I mean, look at Alex Sarr. What did he have? 8 points, 4 rebounds or something, like 4 or 14 from the field against the Rockets in that game. And he, of course, was the number 2 pick. He was the second pick for the Wizards. So, yeah, Reed Sheppard is dominating this draft class, most certainly. He's even getting props from guys, like Trae Young and Jay Morant and those guys. They're noticing. So when that happens, you've got something. I'll tell you what I thought was good too, Robert, is, these guys haven't played together at all, but they look like that they played together for a little while. And it was good to have Cam Whitmore there, if for no other reason, to kind of be the quote unquote veteran on the floor. He just turned 20 years old, right? But
yeah, he's actually younger than Reed is.
He's younger than Reed, but he's the veteran as far as the summer league because he played last year. I think that's been a valuable asset for Reed Sheppard because he has been mentoring Reed and kind of showing him the ropes and, just telling him things to do. And Reed's been passing him the ball. I love his passing skills. That's another thing I think we can say that Reed can definitely pass the ball.
Yeah, you said Cam Whitmore and their chemistry. Cam kind of did what he was supposed to do as a summer league sophomore, except for that awful third game against the Pistons. Frankly, it was unwatchable from both teams. And the only real disappointment was AJ Griffin. It's especially bad when you see a soon-to-be third-year player look awful. It's bad shooting, bad decision-making. But Steven, he's just kind of a back-of-the-bench lottery ticket. So overall, it's just been fantastic, the summer league so far.
Well, unfortunately, that's true. I mean, you kind of hoped that maybe AJ Griffin might be rejuvenated, and maybe he still will, but at least, from this early look, it doesn't look like it. But I know some of the big men came through too. What was the last name? Robinson? I can't think of his first name.
Yeah, Orlando
Robinson. He looked pretty good too. So there are some names that we could keep an eye on as training camp approaches, and then we'll just see what goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockets are so deep, though. I mean, everybody else besides Reed, Cam, and AJ just it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a bunch of guys that are either going to be on two ways or we'll see them in the Rio Grande Valley or something like that. But really, I mean, the thing is, Steven, the Rockets, you're just looking so forward to the season now because it's like, man, some of these guys were injured at the end of last year. Now you add Reed to the mix. Now you add Steven Adams to the mix. And it's going to be fun. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Well, that's true, Robert. I know last year I was kind of looking forward to the season just because I knew Ime Udoka was a winner. And I knew if anybody could turn this team around, he could. I wasn't sure that they could make the playoffs, but I thought they would be close. Well, they were. So this year, it's kind of like the Texans. It's time for the Rockets to take that next step, in their case, to make the playoffs. And just looking at some of these guys, can Cam Whitmore come back and have another good year? Can Amen Thompson continue to develop? Can Tari Eason, can he come back from his injury and be the Tari Eason that we want him to be, Robert? That's going to be the biggest question mark for me, is what kind of Tari Eason are we going to see after such a major injury? And we could even say that for Alperen Şengün. What is he going to be like? So there are some question marks, but there's definitely some excitement going into this training camp. And I'm like you. Baseball is my passion, like basketball is yours. That I'm looking forward to the Rockets training camp and just kind of getting into the season and seeing what these guys are like, especially now with Reed Sheppard aboard.
Well, for fans of the other two teams, it's coming. We're going to hit some Texans and Astros shortly, but a quick YouTube reminder. Tell us how you feel about Sheppard, Whitmore, and Griffin in the comments. We definitely want to hear from you. If nothing else, always click that thumbs up to support our content. Well, unfortunately, Rockets training camp is a couple of months away, but the Texans start on Thursday, and 2 weeks from Thursday is the first preseason game. Stephen,
Wow.
What have you been working on in the offseason? Did you add 20 pounds of muscle? Did you got your 40 time up? What's been going on?
I don't know if it's 20 pounds of muscle, Robert. 20 pounds of good home cooking, perhaps. That's about what I've added. So that's my contribution to the Texans season. At least when I get hit, I may only break a couple of ribs instead of, half a dozen now. So yeah, it's exciting. We're recording this on the 16th, and the Texans training camp opens on the 18th. So there will be all kinds of things that we're going to look for. And I know something that we could probably discuss, in a future podcast, Robert, and it's not something I really want to discuss, but what Texans are going to take the steps forward that we hope they will, but what are some ones that are going to kind of regress a little bit? Because it's going to happen. I mean, it happens with every team. But there are just going to be a lot of things to watch, some really exciting things, and then some things you're like, well, what are we going to expect here? But it's just exciting to know that football is ramping up and the Texans have such high hopes. Let's hope that they can meet them.
This year, I was thinking about, okay, what guy do you really want to see in training camp and see where he's at? And this was a question posed to me also on another Texans podcast. And I said, the guy I want to see, and I'm anxious to see what he's got, after this offseason is Kenyon Green. I mean, if there's one guy, it's Kenyon Green, because he could really turn around this offensive line if he's healthy, and he's the Kenyon Green we thought we drafted with first-round pick.
Yeah, I'd say so. And my guy would be Dameon Pierce, because you don't know what kind of Dameon Pierce you have. Joe Mixon is going to be your featured back. We know that. But obviously, Joe Mixon is one guy. He can't do it all by himself. You're going to get, some of the draft choices coming in, like the guy from Louisville and, others that are in camp. Dameon Pierce, if he could just figure out this system and be the Dameon Pierce that he was a couple of years ago, that is all the better for the Texans. So he's a guy that I really want to see shine, because the Texans running game, I mean, let's face it, it's got to be good this year, Robert. Just because C.J. Stroud is a great passer, you've still got to have that running game to complement it. Joe Mixon can do that, but he's got to have some help, and Dameon Pierce could be that help if he can get it together.
Yeah, we just want to see Dameon. I just want to see the guy that we saw a couple of years ago. That's it. Just give me that guy.
Absolutely, and he can be.
This year we've got those new kickoff return rules, and sadly, I'm thinking about that because we lost the Texan favorite this weekend, Jacoby Jones. Stephen, was he the most electric Texans return man? Is there anybody in team history you were more excited to see catch a kick or punt?
Well, the only one that I guess it comes even close is J.J. Moses, but I don't think J.J. Moses even, because Jacoby Jones still holds several records. I think punt return yards, all-purpose yards, return touchdowns. I think he still holds the record. So he still holds several franchise records. So the answer is no. And man, the guy just turned 40 last Thursday, and then 3 days later, he's gone. And yeah, you talk about electric. And I will say this about Jacoby Jones, he got such an unfair, just such an unfair thing happened with the big mistake he made in the playoff game and how that turned out. That talk about the way the fans reacted, just basically ran him out of town. Guys like Jacoby Jones, Robert, don't often get a do-over. I mean, you think of other guys who made critical mistakes in their careers that cost the team, a championship or a playoff game. Bill Buckner comes to mind, the Boston Red Sox in the 86 World Series. Jackie Smith, remember Super Bowl, I think it was Super Bowl 12, when Jackie Smith of the Cowboys dropped a touchdown pass that ultimately led to the Steelers winning that Super Bowl. And Jacoby Jones got a do-over because he turned things around in Baltimore. He became a hero winning Baltimore a Super Bowl with that huge 108-yard return, catching a touchdown pass the only player in Super Bowl history to accomplish such a thing. So there's a guy, Robert, you talk about redemption. Jacoby Jones got his.
Yeah, just universally beloved too. J.J. Watt and Matt Schaub both called him one of the most fun-loving teammates and people that they'd ever been around. They said he was always dancing and laughing, had a permanent smile on his face. Joel Dreesen tweeted out that he was one of my all-time favorites. We always tried to be the first one to celebrate with the other after scoring a TD. He was always helping me refine my dance moves. The news this morning hurts badly, unquote. And Stephen Ray Rice might have had the best remembrance. He said, quote, "There's some people out there that don't understand the definition of living and existing. Jacoby embodied what it was like to live. If your light was dim, he could turn it on for you. When my light was dim, he was one of the guys that called me."
That's very well said. And, you're talking about the dance moves. It's kind of funny because you may remember, Robert, he was on Dancing with the Stars. I want to say it was 2016, 2015. He was in there and he was in like the top 4. He went very deep in Dancing with the Stars. He almost won the thing. So he definitely had some dance moves, and he showed him every chance he got on the football field. But then he turned it into something else on the TV screen in a different way. So, yeah, there's another guy that just was a fun-loving teammate, that so many have talked about, and a great player. And that's why I just always thought it's so unfair that some people, not everybody, but some people judge him on one play, because you just can't do that.
Yeah, I wrote down his 4 signature moments. And of course, none of those were really for the Texans. You mentioned him, Stephen. Number 1's got to be the Mile High Miracle. Number 2 is the Super Bowl. I would say 2 and 3 are from that Super Bowl where he has you said the touchdown catch and the kickoff return. And number 4, as you said, was that third place on. I'd put the Dancing with the Stars over it. Nobody's going to remember anything with the Texans over the Dancing with the Star stuff. So it's pretty good from a guy out of Lane College to accomplish all that in just a short time.
Well, that's right. I think it was 2007 that the Texans drafted him.
Third round pick.
Or no, yeah, third round, and Lane College. I mean, couldn't even tell you where it is. I'd have to Google it. So yeah, there's a guy that he came from a small college and he kind of took the league by storm. And as you talk about electric, I mean, yeah, there are just few players that the Texans can say in their short history who were as electric as Jacoby Jones. The one thing you could say is when he put his hands on the ball, exciting things happened.
I didn't get a chance to interview him or just be around him. He had left the Texans right before I was credentialed I think it was 2013. He left in 2012.
Right.
But Jacoby, he played with current Texan John Weeks, who I believe played also with Otto Graham. I don't know. I can't verify that.
Yeah, John Weeks. He was around when Roger Staubach was the quarterback, I think.
Yeah, Jacoby was only a year and a half older than John Weeks, in fact. And Stephen, it's just a hell of a career and a hell of a life. He was first team All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and a Super Bowl title for a guy, again, Lane College, third round pick. Nobody probably knew his name when the Texans drafted him.
Well, I remember, when they drafted him, it's like, well, who is this guy? Came trying to find out in training camp, and he did make a pretty quick impression. But for somebody who only lived to be 40, Robert, as you said, he lived every day to the fullest, and just a lot of great memories. I mean, I was reading a lot of the social media comments that you ran down. I mean, just one after another. They just had something unique to say about Jacoby Jones. And I know, a lot of people do that when someone passes away, but when it's authentic. And in the case of Jacoby Jones, it certainly was.
Yeah, it's not a simple rest in peace, whatever. You can see a lot more to the tributes than that.
Yeah, specific examples of things like Joel Dreesen. I mean, I really liked his comments of how, they celebrated with each other, patted each other on the back, those personal things are what you really notice.
Well, let's switch over to the Astros. And despite the rumors, Lance McCullers is alive. But, Stephen, it's probably time to bury his arm in the edge.
He's alive. His arm, not so much. And, I feel bad for Lance, honestly. I mean, I know we pick on him a lot and we just feel like he's never going to pitch again. But, for a guy that is so competitive, it's just a shame to watch this. And
yeah, I threw it up on social media. It's funny you mentioned that because, people, we joke about it, even his arm. And let's be clear, we're joking about his arm. I mean, and right. I'm sure it's no joke to him. But look, the Astros, they've won 2 championships in their history. McCullers is right there with Altuve, Verlander, and Bregman as the 4 key guys who are major contributors on those 2 championships. And he's done everything the franchise asked. He's a damn good person, great teammate. I kind of get depressed a little bit that for some people, the injuries will feel like his legacy, especially for a guy who said, he quote, and I said it before, but it was kind of jokingly, but he said he wanted to be buried in the H. And, that's who you want to root for if you're a fan.
Well, absolutely. And how quickly we forget the 24 straight curveballs in 2017 and just the other times, even in the 2022 World Series, the way he contributed. And you hope, if he does
he contributed before the World Series.
Before the World, right.
Not
in the World
during
Series.
the World Series.
Right.
He helped us get there.
Point. He helped him get there.
Yeah, no, he was good that year. No, he was good. He was good. He helped them for sure. And unfortunately, it's like, okay, maybe people's memories are him getting lit up in Philly and, the arm injury and stuff like that. But, we forget you win World Series because you had to get there to begin with. And he helped him get there for sure. And also, we got to remember with Lance, he's put himself out there. And I think it's unfair to go, well, he shouldn't put himself out there because he's hurt. He's trying to be a member of the community. He's, somebody comes to him and says, hey, you want to be in a commercial doing Astros stuff? We'll pay you a few dollars. He's like, why not? And for him, you might as well take advantage of any dollar that you can make right now, because look, after this, Steven, I don't know where his career is. I mean, it feels like it's just about over with.
Well, exactly. I mean, this guy is passionate. I mean, why would you argue with passion? And when you think about how sometimes people forget, once athletes get hurt, if they're out for 6 months, a year, whatever, they forget about you and move on to the next superstar. Well, obviously, they still come to Lance because they know what type of personality he is. And that's the kind of guy you want on your team. You want them doing commercials representing your team. Okay, he's not on the mound throwing, but he's still an Astro. They haven't waived him. They haven't traded him.
He's there in the dugout all the time.
He is there in the dugout. He hangs around the team. I mean, that shows the passion. How many players do you know who will do that? Maybe a handful, but not that many. And that's why you root for the guy. You want him to come back. And I think if he does, and, here I am preaching to Lance McCullers what he should do with his career. And I know he's listening to me right now. I am not. But he probably should think about just trying to get it out of the bullpen instead of trying to come back as a starter. I just don't feel that his arm, as much as it's been through, if he does come back, I would say it's probably more in the form of a bullpen pitcher. But you know what? Whatever form of Lance McCullers you do get, if he contributes, all the better for the Astros. That's what I would say.
And I'm sorry, because I sort of led with the negative. Look, less than a month ago, the Astros were 10 games out of the AL West first place. Today, they're 1 game out. Espada's gone from this Twitter pinata to a manager of the year candidate. Look, this guy, he took all this crap for he's had a decimated starting pitching staff, a joke at first base for a couple of months, a shaky back half of the bullpen, and has made an incredible run with his MVP candidate, Kyle Tucker, out for the last month.
Yeah, that's right. And then, I mean, we talk about a lot of teams coming back from adversity. The Astros have done it before. They certainly did it in 2004 and 2005 when they went to the World Series that last year in 2005. Sometimes you just don't walk through a division title from beginning to end. Sometimes you got to earn it. Thankfully, the AL West is not that competitive. Well, so much the better for the Astros. That's what's allowed them to come back. And remember, Robert, they were terrible in 2020. And I know 2020 was, it was a COVID season. It was crazy. Everybody it wasn't normal. But the Astros still made the playoffs, even, especially when they put in that extra playoff spot. They still made the playoffs and did something with it. So this season is not over by any means. They are in position to take over in the second half, and that's all that counts.
I feel like our starting pitching staff is still in COVID. I don't know if they've been allowed to come out of with the mask off and everything.
Well,
like
you're
that.
Almost afraid for them too, or somebody else will get hurt. I mean, that's kind of where it is right now with me.
I've got 3 burning Astros All-Star break questions, Steven. Number 1, here you go. The first one is there any chance they can keep this up with Blanco, Brown, and Arrighetti, the young guys likely to run out of gas as the season goes on? I mean, we're already seeing Ronell's velocity dropping.
If they get some help, yes. I mean, that's the only way. And I know, Hunter Brown kind of went through his last year, but you still have to be careful with him. And Blanco, certainly, you've got to start managing him somehow. The way things are now, it's almost impossible to do that. So, get him some help, and you absolutely can do that.
Yeah, they would love a 6-man pitching staff. Unfortunately, they can't find more than 4 guys healthy at once typically. So it's hard to have a 6-man rotation. So you could maybe take some of the pressure off these guys, lessen their inning load and stuff like that. All right, number 2, is Montero about to get the Jose Abreu release? He's got a 9.28 ERA and over a 1,000 OPS against in his last 13 appearances. That's going back to early June, Steven.
I don't think you're going to see it during the season. Now, if it continues along the path, you might certainly, if the Astros make the playoffs, you won't see him on the postseason rosters. But as far as an Jose Abreu release type of thing, I'm not sure that's going to happen at least until after the season if he keeps up this path. But you never know.
Yeah, my number 3 question, I say this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but not really. Can Jose Altuve please borrow Jeff Bagwell's hand padding and Biggio's suit of armor? Steven, I'm just so tired of seeing him get hit. He's got to go up to the plate with more protection because I've never seen a 5'5" player get hit more and get less respect from the umpires and baseball's bigwigs on this deal.
Boy, I know it. And, this last time he was certainly lucky. I mean, I think even days after, it was right before the All-Star break, he was showing reporters his hand when he got hit on the hand the last time. It still looked bruised, Robert, but he didn't go on the DL. He's still playing. I know he's not in the All-Star game, and I'll get to that in a moment. But, yeah, you hold your breath every time he comes to bat and they pitch him inside. You can almost say that for Yordan Alvarez. I'm tired of him getting hit in the leg or everywhere else he's getting hit.
But with Yordan, I get it because he's huge and because
right.
The place you beat Yordan is up around his hands, which makes it look like, they're always throwing at him. But with Altuve, it's like, it's kind of, isn't it hard to hit a guy that's like 5'5" and it's not like Altuve. I mean, maybe you're gonna have a little bit more luck getting in on the hands with him, but typically you get Altuve out with that low and away stuff.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't know, the padding is certainly a big issue. And I know batters get comfortable batting a certain way, but as you saw, in the World Baseball Classic last season, when he was out for a couple of months because he got hit on the hand, that's just not something you can afford for a guy that, let's face it, he's your mainstay. If you're going to make the postseason, if you're even going to get there, you need Jose Altuve. And then when you get there, you're definitely going to need Jose Altuve to get you through that stretch.
Remember when Brian Abreu got suspended because they thought he purposely hit a player in a crucial moment of a playoff game that the Astros desperately needed to win? I mean, Astros, you remember this, Steven, while we were gone, they got hit 9 times in 6 days by the Twins and Blue Jays. Did you see one warning from an umpiring crew during that time? Because I didn't.
No, there wasn't. But to be fair, in that series, the Astros hit some bad. I know Hunter Brown hit a guy. Someone else hit another. They didn't warn. I don't think they warned anybody in that series. And I'll tell you what, when Aledmys Garcia, the Rangers, got hit in that final game on Sunday, I was holding my breath, A, hoping there wasn't going to be a fight, and B, that another Astros pitcher wasn't going to get nabbed and warned about hitting a guy. So, yeah, the Astros have been hit quite a bit, and nobody's sticking up for them. But we have to be fair. I mean, they've hit some batters too lately, and the umpires haven't said anything about that either. So, I don't know. This whole hit batters thing, I've always thought it's silly, but it just never seems to get any better.
And look, let's go. You mentioned before about Altuve. We'll go back to him for a second because he's not going to play in the All-Star game. We're talking about this on Tuesday, so of course everybody knows by now. But he's not going to play in the All-Star game again. He made that decision himself. And frankly, I don't care if he plays in the All-Star game, and I certainly don't care what other fans or other media says about Jose Altuve, because if there's one thing that I've learned, Steven, they have no clue who this guy really is.
Well, of course they don't, because they don't cover the team on a regular basis and they don't watch the team on a regular basis. There was an article by Ken Rosenthal this week in The Athletic kind of addressing that issue. And the tone, was Jose Altuve not playing in the All-Star game. It was kind of a shame. It's not the same without him. While he didn't come out and say that Altuve is intentionally ducking, he did point out one thing, Robert, and that is before the Astros cheating scandal, before it all came to light, Jose Altuve did participate in several All-Star games. I think the last one was 2018. Ever since the cheating scandal hit, he has not seen an All-Star game voluntarily. He's been voted to them, but he has, for one reason or another, chosen not to. And in this case,
let's remember, his thoughts are probably, Altuve doesn't want to get the booze.
He did say that was part of the whole thing.
Yeah, and my answer to that is, what do you mean he doesn't want to get the booze? He gets booed everywhere he goes. He is used to the booze. He's used to shutting up the booze like he always does.
Right.
And look, what also didn't happen before the cheating scandal was his 30s. It's injuries. Like that wasn't happening either. And like, I can't believe these national guys are that. Well, no, I can't believe it. They're that dumb.
Well, and in Rosenthal's defense, as I said, he didn't come right out and say that he's ducking. And he did point out, Robert, as you said about the boos, he said, well, he gets booed everywhere else. And, he's used to that every day. But it's just something that he pointed out. And I understand the fans want to see the best players in the All-Star game. I get it. But let's be honest, the All-Star game, at least to the players, it doesn't mean the same as it used to. Let's just be real about that. It doesn't. You never saw guys, well, I shouldn't say never. It did happen. But decades and decades, most of the time, you would see the best players in the All-Star game. Now, you see a bunch of substitutes. Guys get voted in by the fans. They dug out for one reason or another, mostly injury related, something like that. The All-Star game, it's just very difficult to do now because the players don't take it as seriously, I think, as we, the fans, would like them to. But in Jose Altuve's defense, look, he's still got an injured hand that, for all intents and purposes, the Astros would certainly love that he skip it so that he can rest it. And I think, the diehard Astros fans feel the same way.
One thing that happened while we were gone, Aledmys Diaz got signed by the Astros to a minor league contract. Anything strike you about that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely going to add some depth especially if you get into, I think he'd be a great September call-up. Aledmys Diaz certainly was another key contributor to some of the Astros, World Series runs, and as well as getting close to that point. The injuries have really plagued him. And of course, they plagued him when he was with the Astros. He signed with the A's last year, didn't quite work out. They released him. The Astros picked him up. If anything, he would add some experience and depth. He has veteran leadership in the clubhouse. So if the Astros did get to the postseason, you might see him in place of, say, a Gray Kessinger. You might want somebody like him on the roster because he can play multiple positions, because he's got that veteran leadership. I think that's as far as you'll see Aledmys Diaz. But, if you're a sentimentalist, you're kind of glad to have him back because it's another guy that was with the Astros during those runs.
How do you feel about the Astros' chances going in the second half of the season? I mean, I think their playoff odds are almost 50-50 at this point.
I think they're 60-40, 70-30 if you talk about being able to be in a position to win the division. I mean, my gosh, they're in position. Now, once they get there, I mean, the pitching has obviously got to hold out for them to get there, but they've certainly got to do something at the trade deadline to bolster that because anything could fall apart in any moment. So
if they don't bolster it, they could get there, but because
they couldn't get beyond it.
Yeah, there's not much hope beyond that.
No, definitely not. But no, I certainly think they could win the division. They're only a game back as we speak. So it's just getting beyond that point that my confidence kind of goes down a bit.
Now, we mentioned earlier, Jacoby Jones passed away, and around that same time, everybody was also stunned to hear the news that Houston sports radio personality Ken Hoffman also passed away. He was on a sports radio station, but it's hard to say his show was a sports show. However, Hoffman was one of the best newspaper columnists in Houston history by most accounts, Stephen.
Robert, you are somebody when you have food named after you. Ken Hoffman, doesn't he have a hot dog named after him at Minute Maid Park? I think it's called the Hoffman New York dog or something. He even has a Shipley's donut named after him. I think it's called the Hoffy Twist. Yes, this is the same Ken Hoffman we're talking about, Robert. You're a personality when you have food named after you. And in all seriousness, he had that interesting combination of wit and grit, I guess you could call it. He had a dry sense of humor. He kind of took after, I'd say, Larry David, the comedian. I haven't seen a lot of his routines, but a lot of people say that Ken Hoffman, was a big fan of Larry David.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Maybe he got some of his humor and kind of his ire from that. But yeah, definitely a big personality in Houston. I think he was on 1560 The Game, which I really didn't listen to much because I've left Houston in the 80s, Robert. So you've been there much longer than I have. But definitely a name that you remember if you kept up with sports and with Houston culture. So, yeah, unfortunately, another person. We lost a lot of people this week, didn't we?
No offense to the 1560 people that worked there, or the station itself. But the fact that you didn't get 1560 doesn't surprise me because I think a lot of people in Houston barely got 1560. It was a hard channel to pick up. And yeah, you mentioned the people that we've lost, and Hoffman and Jacoby Jones. It's hard to find anybody that says a bad word about him. They got the most out of life. It's hard for me to mourn them too much because those guys got every bit out of everything. And I just wish, I had their fun and joy and all that sort of stuff. I try, but not quite. And, it was a tough weekend. I mean, Shannen Doherty, I wasn't a 90210 or Charmed fan, but, she seemed like just a mainstay for, my entire life, watching her on various things. My sister was a big fan of 90210. So I know she's real sad about that. And then, losing two they were originals, American originals. Like, you can't find people that are this unique anymore, Stephen. Richard Simmons and Dr. Ruth. And
oh my goodness. Yeah.
And Richard Simmons, I mean, he was kind of a joke at times, but he wasn't a joke to a lot of people because he did so much to help people with, his belief in health and fitness. And it's something that I definitely feel even stronger than I've ever felt, about that. And he was so, he was so fun, and he didn't mind making fun of himself for the most part. And that was cool.
He certainly didn't.
And then Dr. Ruth, she was talking about stuff that nobody could talk about, and she could get away with talking about stuff nobody else could talk about, as far as
especially back in the 80s, 70s and 80s on television.
Yeah. And I have a really close friend that's the granddaughter of Dr. Joyce Brothers, who was one of the original people that talked about sex on television.
That's right.
And I feel like Dr. Ruth was sort of the, adopted daughter in a way, because she couldn't have existed if Dr. Joyce Brothers didn't exist. And I think they're working on a Joyce Brothers documentary, and I can't wait till that comes out. I'm really excited. I know her family is very excited about that. But yeah, just it's sad. But Dr. Ruth, she had lived a very long and great life, and just
she was 96.
Yeah, incredible story too, because her parents were in the Holocaust, and I think she lost both of her parents in the Holocaust. So I mean, it's and I will just conclude, because I think Richard Simmons would appreciate this. I beg of everybody out there, go look up the dangers of seed oils. Be careful of what you eat, and start off with seed oils and ultra processed food, because I'll just say, look it up. It's important. I think it's more important than maybe anything that I could tell you about your health. And 30% of your calories are from seed oils, and I feel like they're kind of a poison. So go check that out. But it's good to catch up with you again, Stephen. I'm glad we're back rolling on Houston Sports Talk.
Yeah, me too, Robert. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad that those of us, the fans that lived in the Houston area in the path of the hurricane, glad y'all are safe. And if you're still without power, well, gosh, I hope you get it back soon. But it is definitely good to be back.
Yeah, all the best to our fans and everybody out there. And we'll talk again in the next couple of days, I think.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.